Have you ever wondered why some people in the Bible experience such dramatic and severe punishments? This question may have crossed your mind as you navigated the scriptures, and it's a valid one. The Bible, as a rich tapestry of human experiences and divine interventions, is filled with stories that can leave us pondering, questioning, and seeking deeper understanding. We often find ourselves intrigued by the severity of certain punishments, especially when they seem to defy the natural order of things. It's essential to remember that these narratives are not just about the punishments themselves. They hold profound insights about faith, obedience, and the consequences of rebellion against divine authority. One of the most striking examples of this is found in the Old Testament, in the story of a man named Korah and his followers. This story, in its stark and dramatic nature, leaves us with an unsettling question. Why were Korah and his followers swallowed by the earth itself? What led to such a severe consequence? One such story is of Korah and his followers who were swallowed by the earth itself. But why? To understand the reason behind their fate, we first need to know who Korah was and what he did. Korah, also known as Korah in many translations, was a prominent figure within the Israelite community. He was a Levite, part of the tribe assigned to serve in the tabernacle, the sacred tent of worship. But Korah's role was not just about religious duties. He was also a cousin of Moses and Aaron, which placed him in a significant position within the tribal hierarchy. However, Korah was not content with his role. According to the book of Numbers, chapter 16, verses 1-3, he led a rebellion against Moses and Aaron, the spiritual and political leaders of the Israelites. Korah, along with 250 Israelite leaders, rose up and challenged Moses and Aaron's authority. They questioned why Moses and Aaron exalted themselves above the assembly of the Lord. Their argument was that all the Israelites were holy and the Lord was among them, so why should Moses and Aaron set themselves up as leaders above the Lord's assembly? This rebellion was not just a political coup, it was a direct challenge to the divine order established by God. It was a challenge to God's chosen leaders and, by extension, a challenge to God himself. But Korah's rebellion was not just about leadership, nor was it a mere power struggle. It was a fundamental misunderstanding of the divine order, a misinterpretation of holiness, and a misguided notion of equality among the Israelites. Korah believed that all Israelites were equally holy and thus equally qualified to lead, failing to understand that God himself had appointed Moses and Aaron. His rebellion was a rejection of God's authority and a refusal to submit to his will. Korah sought to usurp the authority of Moses and Aaron, not understanding that by doing so, he was attempting to usurp the authority of God who had appointed them. But Korah's dissatisfaction with Moses and Aaron was about more than just leadership. It was about power and authority. So, what happens when a person challenges God's appointed leadership? The answer to this question lies in the tragic tale of Korah and his followers. Let's delve into the heart of the matter. Korah, a Levite, along with Dathan, Abiram, and 250 Israelite leaders, dared to question Moses and Aaron's authority. They gathered in opposition, voicing their discontent, asserting that all the people in the congregation were holy, and Moses and Aaron were no more special than anyone else. This was not a mere disagreement or a peaceful protest. It was a direct challenge to the divine order established by God himself. It was a rebellion, a grave sin that would have dire consequences. Korah and his followers were not merely questioning Moses and Aaron, they were in essence questioning God. In response to this rebellion, Moses proposed a test. Each man was to bring his censer with burning incense before the Lord. The next day, as they stood at the entrance of the tabernacle with their censers, the glory of the Lord appeared to the whole community. Moses announced, "This is how you will know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of my own accord." As soon as he finished speaking these words, the earth split open beneath them. Korah and his followers, along with all their possessions, were swallowed by the earth. The ground closed over them, and they perished, vanishing from the assembly. This event, found in Numbers 16, verses 31-33, serves as a chilling reminder of the severity of their rebellion. It wasn't a mere punishment, it was a divine judgment, a clear sign of God's disapproval of their defiance. Thus, Korah and his followers met their end, swallowed by the very earth they stood upon. Their story serves as a stark warning to all who dare challenge God's appointed leadership, highlighting the grave consequences of rebellion. The earth closed over them, but the story didn't end there. The echoes of Korah's rebellion reverberated through the Israelite community, leaving a trail of consequences in its wake. You see, in the aftermath, the Israelites were not left unscathed. As we find in Numbers 16, verses 41 to 50, a plague broke out among the Israelites, a chilling testament to the gravity of Korah's rebellion. But let's delve a bit deeper. As the dust settled, the Israelites grappled with fear and confusion. They mourned their losses, yes, but they also questioned their leaders. The very next day, they accused Moses and Aaron of killing the Lord's people. It's a stark reminder of how quickly we can forget, how rapidly we can lose sight of the truth when fear and uncertainty cloud our judgment. Yet in this moment of crisis, God's grace shone through. The plague, which had already claimed 14,700 lives, was halted. And how was it stopped? By Aaron, yes, the same Aaron whose authority had been challenged by Korah. He stood between the living and the dead, offering incense to atone for the people's sin, and the plague was checked. In this, we see a reaffirmation of Aaron's priesthood, a divine endorsement that silenced any remaining doubts. It was a clear message to the Israelites that Aaron was indeed chosen by God, and that rebellion against God's appointed leaders was tantamount to rebellion against God himself. But there's more. The staff of Aaron not only budded but blossomed and bore ripe almonds, a sign of divine approval that was impossible to ignore. This miracle served as a final, undeniable confirmation of Aaron's authority, a signpost pointing to God's chosen leader. So Korah's rebellion served as a warning, a reminder of the consequences of challenging God's authority. It left a mark on the Israelite community, a scar that served as a constant reminder of the dangers of rebellion and the importance of obedience to God's chosen leaders. Now we must ask ourselves, what can we learn from Korah's story? From the outset, Korah's story presents us with stark lessons, some of which may seem harsh, yet they are important reminders of the significance of humility, obedience to God's commands, and respect for God's appointed leaders. Humility is a virtue that stands at the heart of our spiritual journey. Korah, filled with pride and ambition, challenged the authority of Moses and Aaron, God's chosen leaders. He sought a position of prominence, not out of a sincere desire to serve God's people, but to satisfy his own ambitions. This pride led to his downfall. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18 offers a timeless wisdom on this. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Korah's story is a vivid reminder that humility is not a sign of weakness, as some may perceive, but a strength that aligns us with God's will. It helps us recognize our place in God's grand design, understand our limitations, and respect the roles and responsibilities that God has entrusted to others. Next, we delve into the importance of obedience to God's commands. God's instructions to his people are not arbitrary. They are given out of love, wisdom, and a desire for their well-being. When Korah and his followers chose to rebel against God's appointed leaders, they were, in essence, rebelling against God himself. The ultimate consequence of their disobedience was severe, serving as a stern reminder of the gravity of disregarding God's commands. Deuteronomy chapter 11 verse 28 warns us, "If you do not obey the Lord your God and do not carefully follow all his commands and decrees, all these curses will come upon you and overtake you." Lastly, Korah's story underscores the necessity of respect for God's chosen leaders. God had chosen Moses and Aaron to lead his people, a decision Korah and his followers refused to honor. In doing so, they not only disrespected Moses and Aaron, but they also demonstrated a lack of faith in God's wisdom and judgment. Hebrews chapter 13 verse 17 advises us to obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will have to give an account. Korah's story, while tragic, serves as a timeless lesson in humility, obedience, and respect. His tale is a reminder that pride and ambition can lead to our downfall, that disregarding God's commands can have serious consequences, and that we must respect the leaders that God has chosen for us. These lessons, though harsh, remind us of the importance of humility before God and respect for his commands. As we reflect on Korah's story, we are reminded of the severity of God's justice, but also his mercy. This tale, etched in the annals of biblical history, serves as a stark warning to all who dare to defy divine authority. Yet it also underscores God's boundless mercy, a quality that shines through even in the face of repeated disobedience. Let's delve deeper into the dichotomy of justice and mercy as seen in Korah's saga. On one hand, we have Korah and his followers who, suffused with pride and arrogance, dared to challenge God's chosen leader, Moses. Their actions were not without consequence. They were swallowed by the earth, buried alive, a vivid illustration of the divine justice meted out to those who rebel against God's authority. Yet this story isn't just about divine wrath. It also showcases God's mercy. Despite the Israelites' repeated disobedience and lack of faith, God continued to guide them, to shape them into a nation. He never abandoned them. This is a testament to his unfailing love and mercy, which remain steadfast even when faced with constant challenges. The story of Korah, then, serves as a potent reminder of two essential aspects of God's nature: his justice and his mercy. It warns us against the perils of pride and rebellion, showing us the dire consequences of such actions. Yet it also shows us that, even in our worst moments, God's mercy prevails. He continues to guide us, to love us, even when we falter and stray. In essence, Korah's story is a mirror held up to our own lives. It implores us to examine our actions, our attitudes, our relationship with God. Are we like Korah, full of pride and defiance? Or do we humble ourselves before God, acknowledging his authority over our lives? In the end, Korah's story is a sobering reminder of the consequences of pride and rebellion against God's authority, but it's also a beacon of hope, a testament to God's enduring mercy and love, even in the face of our shortcomings. In closing, the story of Korah and his followers being swallowed by the earth is more than just a tale of divine punishment. It is a stark reminder of the critical importance of humility, obedience, and respect for God's authority, woven into the rich tapestry of the Old Testament. Let's take a moment to recap. Korah and his followers, fueled by pride and a sense of entitlement, rose in rebellion against Moses and Aaron, the leaders appointed by God. Instead of acknowledging their roles and trusting in God's wisdom, they chose to challenge his divine authority. The result was swift and severe. The earth opened up and swallowed them whole, a chilling illustration of the consequences of disobedience. But why such a harsh punishment? Why were Korah and his followers buried alive? The answer lies in the gravity of their actions. They didn't merely disrespect Moses and Aaron, they disrespected God himself. Their rebellion was not just against human leadership, but against the divine order established by God. The severity of the punishment underscores the seriousness of their transgression. This story serves as a stark warning against the dangers of pride and disobedience. It reminds us of the importance of humility and obedience, of respecting the authority that God has established. We see the consequences of challenging God's authority, of letting pride and ambition cloud our judgment. But the story of Korah does more than just warn us of the perils of disobedience. It also enlightens us on the virtues that God values. Humility, a trait often overlooked in our modern world, is of paramount importance in the eyes of God. It is humility that allows us to submit to God's will, to accept his decisions without question. It is humility that keeps our ego in check, preventing us from overstepping our boundaries and challenging God's authority. Similarly, respect for God's authority is a recurring theme throughout the Bible. It underscores the importance of acknowledging God's sovereignty, of accepting his leadership without question. Korah's story serves as a potent reminder of this. And finally, obedience. Korah and his followers were punished not just for their pride, but for their disobedience. Their refusal to submit to God's chosen leaders was a direct violation of God's commandments. And as the story illustrates, disobedience to God's commandments carries severe consequences. So what can we glean from this? The story of Korah teaches us the importance of humility, respect for God's authority, and obedience. It reminds us to trust in God's wisdom, to submit to his authority, and to follow his commandments. It warns us of the dangers of pride and disobedience and the severe consequences that come with them. May we take these lessons to heart, remembering always to walk humbly with our God. Micah 6:8.